Another fine mess we've gotten ourselves into. Welcome. Cold open, as cold as it can be, because we're going straight into it. My name is Ashley, hosting this shindig. Joining me, as usual, AJ.
Yeah. Oh, I'm out of sync again. That's
Oh, hold on. Let's switch over to Isle of Dogs, because I realise I need to do the thing I always forget to do. Switch the region. So then the sync is slightly less for about 5 minutes at least.
yeah. There we go.
Um, sorry, I love the fact I introduced AJ, and then the next time we see him, he's doing the Mr. Hanky. And also this week's submitter to the club, I guess, Chris. And yeah, we're getting to nearly the 30th anniversary. I mean, we're 18 months short, but hey, if it's as we talked about it last night, if it's good enough for a 26th anniversary edition of the Burbs, we're gonna do a 28 and a half anniversary edition, talking about Mark of the Phantasm. Which I guess still to this day is only the only official proper release in cinemas of a Batman animated thing. Because I guess all the other things like the Dark Knight Returns and the Killing Joke ones were considered, I guess, special events and not specifically for cinema release.
Yeah, I think when we went and saw The Killing Joke, I think it was only out 2 days. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think wasn't it like one or two showings each day too?
Yeah, I think so. And it wasn't the story with this one that it was like initially supposed to be straight to video, and then they decided to go theatrical instead.
Yeah, which I thought was a weird choice to take that one theatrical, but
Yeah, because it wasn't until because I know it like really didn't do well box office wise. It was Siskel and Ebert that like resurrected it.
yeah, it was something that they skipped, and then I think during their review they admitted that they made a mistake in skipping it.
Yeah, because it was when Batman Forever was out, and
Mm-hmm.
they were like, you can probably do this instead.
Yeah, they said that the kids movie felt more for adults than the adult movie did.
I just remember that the only thing that was really controversial was that Siskel didn't like Hamill as the Joker, but yet he loved the rest of the movie, which is really interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. That was why they decided to do it. Like, they actually opened it on Christmas Day. Not just literally for like around Christmas time. It literally opened on Christmas Day, which makes me wonder what the hell came out of that week. I mean, to be fair, it only got number 11 in the charts that week. But I'm just intrigued to see what it was going up against.
I
Wow.
think that would have been. I think Schindler's List would have been around there.
Schindler's List was number 10. Number 9 was The Piano. Number 6 was Geronimo American Legend. Number 7 was Wayne World's 2. New entry at number 6 was Grumpy Old Men. Beethoven's Second was at number 5. Sister Act 2 at number 4. The highest new entry was Tombstone. And the only other releases that did well on Christmas weekend were number 2, which was Mrs. Doubtfire, and number 1 being The Pelican Brief.
What a list!
Yeah, I forgot there was actually an era where Grisham movies were like some of the biggest things ever.
Also released that same weekend in the obligatory 4 cinemas was some film called Philadelphia. I don't know what happened to that.
Man, that list alone just reminded me how stacked of a year '93 was.
And that doesn't even include the 30th week of Jurassic Park being in the charts as well, at number
True.
16. So yeah, it's just an interesting release, you know. Interesting. A studio trying to put something out because nobody's bringing something out this weekend. I wonder why Sony's trying to copy it with Spider-Man this Labor Day. But yeah, we've got a fair chunk of comments, probably from. Bri just quickly. I saw what you thing and then you retracted it. I don't think I said Beethoven. No, I think I said Beethoven. It's just probably the way my mic sounded. Then again, Beethoven might be the sequel to B movie that we should have got. Who knows?
It's B movie through the lens of Paul Verhoeven. That's what Beethoven is.
With the dodgy CGI of Ed 209. There we go. It all comes together. So yeah, the thing I find most fascinating about this is the fact that the whole character of Andrea, however you want to pronounce it, really hasn't been used ever since. Despite the fact there's a lot of interesting story there that could be used, but no, we got to go with sort of the villains that have been around since the 50s. Despite the fact that this is the more interesting sort of story and backstory that we probably had for Batman in decades. I would say.
I would say so, especially as far as a love interest, because a lot of if you look at the movies, a lot of his love interests are really cookie cutter, outside of Catwoman. He doesn't really he doesn't have a Mary Jane or, a Lois Lane, one of the known love interests. So it's definitely somebody that meets his equal in mystique, with him being a character shrouded in mystique and mystery. So it is interesting that we didn't do anything more with that, especially since Harley Quinn took off as a result of the animated series. I think it could have been very easy for Andrea to take off as well.
And it only took until I think 2020, from what I was reading on Wikipedia, for her to show up again properly in the comic books.
That might be the case. I'm not sure.
Whether it's just a case of nobody knows what to do because they feel the pressure of it has to be on the same level that Phantasm was, because it's always been the sort of, for anything that's been DC animated wing, Phantasm's always been sort of that high bar that something's had to reach, and if it doesn't go to it, it's well, it's it's no mark of the Phantasm.
AJ, do you think if the category would have been around back then, that Mask of the Phantasm would have been nominated for animated feature? You think about having a theme?
93. Did Disney have a big movie that year? Because I was trying to think if this could have won.
Yeah, because Aladdin was in 92 and then Lion King was in 94. I don't think there was anything in between those.
Animated movies of 1993. Let's look at IMDb. The one thing that might concern you is technically on releases and everything, Nightmare Before Christmas was 93. We have Mask of the Phantasm, The Thief and the Cobbler, Once Upon a Forest, We're Back, A Dinosaur Story.
I was getting ready to say, oh man, Nightmare and Mask of the Phantasm, that could have been a really killer lineup. What else do we have? And it's oh no, it just would have been those
Go,
two.
Hugo, go, whatever the hell that is. And apparently somebody tried to do animated adaptation of Halloween Tree. Okay, it's listed as a TV movie, but okay.
So it would have been Nightmare versus Phantasm.
Well, you've also got the Flintstones are Yabba Dabba Doo, but again, that would probably be TV movie. Secret Adventures of Tom Thumb. That's a David Copperfield's a TV film. I don't even know what the international one would have been. If it had to be free, I guess We're Back a Dinosaur Story, even though that isn't great. But like, there's nothing else that fits on the list at all. But yeah, it's an interesting turn. It sort of, and Spencer sort of brings this up, and Mark Hamill makes a great Joker. Is it me, or does his sort of voice not sound the same as the animated series? It's slightly tweaked a bit. Because I thought it was a bit deeper than, because maybe it's the version that I'm watching. It's 73 minutes rather than the actual sort of 78, because it's in the UK sort of like slightly faster speed or whatever. But the voice at certain points, his voice sounded like Joker that I've known for the past 20-30 years, but then other points it's like I can't tell whether that's Mark Hamill.
Like he goes from like on the animated series, he's like a New Hope Mark Hamill, and in the movie, he's Return of the Jedi Mark Hamill.
To some extent, yeah. It sort of like was. I mean, also just like having Abe Vigoda. Okay, as we talked about the stereotypes of Joe Mantegna on the last one, it seems like Abe just played gangster types.
Good Burger.
In anything and everything.
Maybe at one point he was a mob boss in Good Burger. Maybe him working at Good Burger was him being in the witness protection program.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw AJ's eyebrows shoot up.
Right.
AJ was like, "Oh, he didn't see the first tangent."
He didn't seem a good fit for Good Burger.
That would especially make sense for how long he worked at Good Burger. It's like, why is he still there? There's no other reason.
Maybe it's his character from The Godfather. Maybe they didn't really kill him. That's what they did with him.
He was very quick to get in on the action.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're sidetracked. I had never really thought about it till you just brought it up, that Batman doesn't have like a Mary Jane or a Lois Lane or a Pepper Potts or something like that. Because Rachel is original to the Nolan movies, isn't she?
Yes. There have been a couple women in the comics outside of Catwoman. Vicky Vale, of course, we got Vicky Vale with Kim Basinger, but then they never brought back Vicky Vale. And then actually what's really funny is the only other instance that I've seen is there's a character in the comics that Bruce dates for a while named Julie Madison, and that's who Bruce's girlfriend is in Batman and Robin of all things.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was thinking about it, and it's like giving Bruce the backstory of having a love story that kind of, I mean, obviously there's the obvious reasons that he became Batman, but it's like the movie seems to depict it that her leaving him was like that last final push into Batmanhood.
I just had a funny thought, and we're going to go on a bit of a tangent again. But whenever like he's dueling with his like it's like a not really dueling with his family, but like begging his family to let him move on and have this person. I just imagine them being like Nicholson in The Shining, talking about Shelley Duvall and just going, "She interferes."
So hopefully she wouldn't need corrected.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was saying was how normally I would think that would be kind of lame when we clearly have an established Batman backstory, and it's like we don't really need that extra level of also a love story kind of pushed in there. But and it's something about his and Andrea's story just actually does kind of work as a backstory.
It's
In a
funny because Batman Forever tackled that too, of having a woman be the reason that Bruce stops, but Phantasm did it so much better
yeah,
because we got history there.
and it's funny how much it makes, like, it's the way you could tell they handled it really well, because it's really, the twist is not surprising at all.
Hmm.
But the fact that it's like, the twist doesn't need to be surprising as long as it makes sense.
Hmm.
And it weirdly feels like it makes sense, especially with how, like, the way the entire plot comes together and the motivation comes together.
And I think too that the Joker was a perfect villain to kind of offset what Bruce is already trying to process. Like he's trying to process that Andrea's been doing things she's not supposed to do, and then it's like, oh, she's going to take on this villain. Of course, it's the Joker. Why wouldn't it be?
I
And,
realised what was going on there. The bloody mic failed on me again. I was trying to say stuff and I was like, why isn't the bar moving?
and there's the idea that, another way that it feels like the twist makes sense is that, the fact that it's based around the fact that her father was killed and it's a vengeance thing,
Hmm.
and the fact that her dad is voiced by Stacy Keach, and Stacy Keach is also the voice of the Phantasm.
Hmm.
It's like this sort of intentional, like the way he as Batman uses he figured a certain image that was going to push forward on his, I don't know if you can call it vengeance, but his
Hmm.
vigilantism at least. And
Hmm.
how that's kind of, it's like her father is kind of her symbol in that way, that it's his. I don't know if, like, it's canon to the movie itself that her dad and the Phantasm have the same voice, but we know that it's Stacy Keach for both of them. So,
Hmm.
but I would like for that to be canon. I hope it's canon.
Josephine said that she saw this on Friday afternoon. All that my mum could say was, this was not for kids.
Yeah.
I think whenever the guy gets crushed by a tombstone in his own grave is the point where you start to realize it's not for kids.
Animated series went up a notch. She also didn't realise it was a '93 film until I told her. To be fair, I was sort of like, at the time I was like wondering whether this was like the pilot to the animated series, because it does feel like it could be that way. But then, of course, with how dark it was, you wouldn't put that on, you know, Saturday
No,
afternoons or whatever.
that's not going to air on Fox Kids.
uh, while the new
But
Batman took
I think
influence,
also like I think what really helps Phantasm 2 is I think it's much harder to make an animated movie that feels very atmospheric, but I feel like Phantasm pulls that off well.
Yeah.
yeah, and the other thing as well is it's sort of like, it's a good introduction to Batman in itself. It's a decent sort of, I guess, the closest thing we have to a similar origin would be what Nolan did with Batman Begins,
Hmm.
with the sort
I
of
wish
like
I
masked
wish we could have got
vigilante
a
style
scene.
before he found the Bat identity.
I wish we could have done though. I wish it would have been referenced. Whenever Bruce in Phantasm puts on the mask and he goes, "All right, let's go, Bruce." I wish I could have seen Christian Bale do that. Like I want to see Christian Bale psych himself up.
Just in his voice. Let's go.
Let's
Let's
do
do
this,
this.
Bruce.
Do it.
Yeah,
Do it with Shia LaBeouf. Just do it.
because when you talk about it being like a good introduction, there is definitely something Mask of the Phantasm has going on that most Batman movies don't. And I think this is another reason that I actually don't mind the love story the way I would in another movie, is that, it's a Batman movie that's actually about Batman.
Yeah.
Like it's the like the one Batman movie where the villains feel like an afterthought almost.
Mm-hmm. And to take that even a step further, I would say it's mostly a movie about Bruce.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that like
Bruce doesn't get to be the main focus that often.
the fact that she is the one of the very few characters that like cottons onto the fact that Bruce is Batman. Just because of okay, it's a bit pity of like, oh, he's standing by the grave. Like this.
Another thing I love about that is it's like normally if this were any other woman, she would say, "Well, that can't be. That's completely unlikely." But in her mind, it's, "Well, if I can do this, clearly he can. I'm doing this shit too, so it's probably him."
It fits.
I also like the fact too that she's not afraid to come back at him. Like if he asks when he asks her if she's still close with her dad, and she responds by saying, "I don't think I'm the one here that's being controlled by their parents."
And then the
And I love
the
his
ghost of
reaction to it. I
Bruce's
love that
parents is just there, like
have a
going,
comeback.
"No, no, not us."
Yeah. But I love it because Bruce doesn't have a comeback. I don't think he responds to anything there. I think he just leaves.
Yeah.
Or she leaves, one of them.
Josephine says, while the new Batman took influence from neo-noirs like Seven and Zodiac, this definitely feels more in the vein of the film noirs from the 40s, where the film is set. I mean, just from the whole World's Fair thing, that just seems so, like, 40s and 50s sort of style in terms of, like, the House of the Future. It's like, yeah, this is the stuff that you look at the 1950s and 60s old sort of like Pathé News or those style reels, and it's like, remember when we thought that shit was gonna happen? Lol.
Yeah, and it's also just kind of the feel of it in general, like brother, you were talking about the atmosphere. There's also like the way the flashbacks are. I feel like that. I mean, Andrea's about as much of a femme fatale as you can get. That's about as fatale as a femme gets.
Yeah. Josephine actually asks whether Andrea or Jessica Rabbit would win in a fight.
Oh, I think Andrea's riding a cloud of smoke right up there.
Yeah, she's got that weapon for, and I think it's. I mean, Jessica Rabbit could charm her into submission. I could see that happening.
She could also probably boob her to death. But another thing that I really like that Phantasm has that you don't see in a lot of Batman movies is we've seen a lot of villains' reactions to his costume. And for a lot of us, it's like, oh, the costume's pretty silly. But the fact that we get Alfred to react the way he does, I think really sells it.
I'm almost positive Alfred shit his pants.
And also, to be fair with Phantasm, we never really get fully explained how it all works. We still have that air of mystery as to, like, how can, she disappear in a bit of smoke? Are we using Christopher Nolan's tactics from The Prestige? Are we?
What I want to know is when she appears on the cruise ship at the end, what the hell did she do with the Joker? like where is he?
What I think is
my head answer? Bruce got to her and she dropped him at Arkham. That's my head answer.
Yeah.
But my fun answer is maybe the Joker is now what makes up the smoke. Was that too intense?
That went a bit too deep. I'm like trying to work out. I'm trying to work out where this would have fallen in terms of the season releases. Like,
another. Speaking of something as insane as that potentially, and the fact that we're dealing with insane characters. Another thing that feels like, because we're talking about how much of a focus there is on Bruce, I feel like this might be the most awareness a Batman movie has had about the fact that Bruce Wayne is kind of a psychopath. Because
even the argument I made a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and talking about like the way Alfred, the guy who raised him, reacts to him, but the whole thing of like, but they also do it with that bit of humor, like when they're talking about Batman being a model of sanity. And then Alfred says, "Oh, by the way, speaking of that, I pressed your tights and put away your exploding gas balls." And it's like that's basically Alfred saying like you're crazy as fuck, but that's okay.
And then I like the fact that Bruce's reaction to the gas balls like being packed away is like this big grin, like yay gas balls.
And then but him being kind of crazy in the movie, drawing attention to that, is actually the perfect mirroring for what Andrea's doing, because as we talked about, you were talking about the cemetery scene where she does the Ed Harrison creep show to him, to Buzz, I think that guy's name was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's not just that she killed him that way or that she's killing these people in these big ways, but to see her stalking through a cemetery for this guy gives her like she's very Reaper like, and the idea that I feel like just prior to one of these big scenes of the Phantasm, we have one of Bruce's flashbacks where he's talking about like it's almost there and I feel like I've got it, but the problem is they're not afraid of me. I need to instill fear, and his obsession with instilling fear feels like it mirrors what's going on with Andrea in the present day, which I thought was really well done.
Also, add to the fact that whenever Andrea rolls up on him, the first thing she says is, "Your angel of death is here."
Yeah.
For all of them.
And I love the Joker's response to that, because the Joker's essentially like, "I never thought you'd get here."
Yeah,
and I think that's why Joker was able to see through the disguise so quickly, because he didn't buy into the bullshit.
Yeah, he sort of like put two and two together with like, isn't that interesting timing that from out of nowhere she calls, you know, when it just so happens.
Yeah, I would say Joker out detectives Batman on that one.
How amazing is it that in that split second where I said earlier this is a movie full of psychopathic characters, we were talking about heroes and anti-heroes. The Joker actually wasn't even in my mind when I said that. So like almost everybody in this movie is a psychopath to some degree. I think what is Alfred our saving grace from that? But then again, he's also an enabler. So
well, Commissioner Gordon, I don't think he's a psychopath.
Yeah, there we go.
Alfred might be. They're snogging and he's bringing out lemonade. No.
I just think about like, you know what moment comes to mind when I think. I mean, obviously, you know, the Joker is one of the most psychopathic characters in any history, movies, comic books, TV, whatever. But talking about this movie in particular, when we talk about them being psychopathic characters, for some reason, you know what moment comes to mind? What was up with him approaching his robot wife or whatever that is? And he pinches her cheek, and the cheek breaks off. So he just sticks it in his pocket. It's like, wow, that was weird.
Let's not forget the fact either that later it's heavily alluded to that they have fucked.
Yeah.
And like of all the murders he's committed, of all these big acts of, we'll call it what it is, terrorism, it's those little things that stand out as this is.
Oh man, I just made a connection. We talked about how Joker figured it out because he saw through everything, right? What does he hit her with later in that fight? A big roll of bologna.
Symbolism.
Never mind the fact it was bologna that right before then he was snacking on. I want to know who died for him to get that bologna.
It is interesting how we were talking about that the villains kind of take a back seat here because it's a movie that's actually about Bruce and Batman. Do you think that's doubly impressive that the villain used is the biggest one they could have gone with, and yet they still pulled off making him basically he's not crucial for a long time. They don't feel like they have to constantly come back to him. It feels like he's barely in it.
Especially now where it feels like, they can't make a Batman series without either teasing the Joker or putting the Joker in it.
We had that whole conversation about them introducing Barry Keoghan in the Batman, where it's like it just kind of feels like it. I can't remember what all analogies we made, but it was like, while it does seem like the Joker can be overused, and some people are saying like you don't have to use him every time. If we had an entire like new set of a Batman story that had the Joker nowhere at all, I personally would feel like there was a gap in it. I feel like one kind of just goes with the other.
I think too, you run into the thing where, whenever there's a superhero movie coming out, the biggest excitement is around who is cast as the hero. I feel like the Joker is the only villain that's on that same level where people are just as excited to see who's going to play him.
Yeah.
At least on the DC side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On the Marvel side, obviously when they've announced sort of the big bads, there's been interest in majors being Kang. And obviously the big sort of the Thanos love and whatever with Brolin and all that. So, when we get to sort of the big bad, that always is sort of a thing, like the sort of the kryptonite to Superman, if you will, like really ever since, at least in Superman terms, when you had Hackman be the sort of the opposite to Reeve, everybody struggled since then in that respect, and in that extent, I still think Hamill is the best counteraction to Batman, even though it's also really well portrayed by Conroy, especially of course because this is Conroy having to play younger Bruce Wayne as well as sort of slightly older. And then of course if you go in the games, we go full circle right up to sort of his demise and everything in the Arkham trilogy and everything. So back to chat. Imagine a sitcom laugh track with Mark Hamill's Joker laugh. Chris will probably like that.
Oh man, his Joker laugh during Schindler's List, the years line up. Oh my god, there might have been a point at one point where somebody was watching Schindler's List in a neighbor theater, and it was a quiet moment, and you could hear the laughter.
Spencer says that Hamill seems like a cool guy. For everything that I've sort of seen him in, he sort of delivered on, in whatever respect.
That, and he just seems like he'd be kind of a cool guy in real life too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like how everybody says that Conroy is like one of our best Batman ever, just based on his voice solely. And I love the fact that when you see Conroy in person, he's like he'd be a soccer dad or something. He just seems so he's so unimposing.
Which is funny because on the other side, if there was a live action version of Batman where Mark Hamill was playing the Joker, I'd believe it.
I still love the fact that the guy that was Batman is the crazy fisherman in the first Jak and Daxter game, where it's like, that does not sound like him. Especially when he goes, "Oh, here comes a big one!" Like, it's like, is that the gas balls, Kevin? Is that the gas balls?
Plus, I think too, this is kind of jumping back, we're kind of all over the place here, but I feel like if you pretty much, like, if you were going to make a Batman movie and you needed a Bruce origin story, show the cemetery scene, his parents get shot, and I think you've got everything you need.
Yeah. So Josephine with some of the trivia stuff. Most of the movie is based on the Batman Year 1 and Year 2 graphic novels, which, considering they're supposed to be 40s sort of style, that does fit. Late in production, Warner Brothers decided to make it a theatrical release instead of direct-to-video. While the animators were thrilled and grateful for this left them with less than a year of production and scrambling to convert the aspect ratio. Oh look, VFX artists in trouble. Do we need to unionize? It's happening all over again. Oh, we shouldn't have been looking at the Oscars actually. This was the only comic book film that's so far been nominated for an Annie Award for Best Animated Feature. I believe.
Spider-Verse would have to be, wouldn't it?
Spider-Verse should have been, right? I guess it would have been Annie Awards.
I don't know how Spider-Verse wouldn't be.
I was gonna say Spider-Verse swept its year, I'm pretty sure, but at the same time, I don't really know Annie history, so and sometimes they can get weird.
Best animated feature. Let's have a quick look. It was up against Night Before Christmas for Best Animated Feature that year, but lost to
What
Lion
ended up
King.
winning? What was it?
Lion King.
In '93?
Well, that's the weird thing. I guess because of release dates and whatever, it wasn't considered for the year of 1993. I guess because it came out that late in December. I guess that's when they hadn't established that it had to come out, you know. Because obviously Nightmare Before Christmas was, had a limited release in mid-October and then went wide at the end of it. And as we mentioned, Mask of the Phantasm was Christmas. But yeah. For the Annies, for some reason, it was the year after.
I'm gonna say, I know you guys do videos about the awards every year, but I'm gonna say it. I fucking hate that the awards use the calendar as a tool.
Yeah.
I hate that so much. Where technically we came out in 1993, even though the rest of the world didn't see it until 1994.
Yeah.
That really, I don't know why that really bugs me. It bugs the hell out of me. I'm looking at you, Hurt Locker.
Yeah, I've just double checked. You know, Spider-Man was in there the same year as Incredibles 2, which I'm pretty sure is a superhero film. So there have been others. It's just it was the first.
It's probably the first in a long time though, because I would guess that maybe Spider-Verse was the first one since Phantasm.
Let's have a quick look. I mean, I'd say The Incredibles would probably be in 2004. So it was still like 10 years. Some sort of superhero-related thing. If you're talking, you know, Spider-Man would be the first from a long existing property. Because I don't think Incredibles 2 can be considered long existing, because considering it would only been like 10, 12, well, no, 2004, so like 15 years. Unlike, you know, Spider-Man that's been around for like 50 at that point.
I was going to say, it's like separating superhero movie and comic book movie. The Incredibles brings us into that whole thing.
Yeah. Andrea Beaumont's based loosely on a combination of Judson Caspian, the Reaper character, which I guess explains the line, and his daughter Rachel Caspian, who were in Batman Year 2. So that little tip.
I've read the comics that the Reaper was in. You could definitely see the resemblance. And actually, I have an encyclopedia that has a picture of the Reaper in it. So while you're going through the chat, I will find it.
Andrea was allegedly named after casting in the vocal supervisor Andrea Romano, whom Kevin Conroy occasionally teased was basically... So it's basically the old... the reason why Mario was called Mario in the games was just because there was some bloke that worked the thing called Mario, and they went, "Yeah, that sounds sort of Italian enough. Nintendo of America approves." Citizen Kane served as an influence for the flashbacks, which, considering that's a story about loss and the passage of time, that sort of does make sense with
Wow.
the sort of fade-ins and fade-outs. There we go.
Yeah.
That's the Reaper from the comics. I don't know how well you can see it.
Yeah, well, certainly the claw that the Reaper has is somewhat similar to the claw that Phantasm uses.
Mm-hmm.
I would have
And I
never
hope doing that just didn't get the video YouTubed.
I would have never put the Citizen Kane thing together, but it actually makes sense now.
So, technically, Batman was part directed by Orson Welles, maybe? Who knows? Or certainly inspired by Orson Welles. Yeah, the writers were heavily cautious of putting Joker into the film because they didn't want to say that it was any way connected to Batman. Which says a lot.
You mean the '89 Batman?
Yeah.
I think they want some connection to Batman the person.
But when
I mean, that was kind of one of the central plots of the Lego Batman movie was how they're connected.
But when writer Michael Reeves said, "We then realised that we could make his appearance serve the story in a way that we never could in live action." Because that's the thing. I always feel in live action, he has to sort of be the lead antagonist, whereas, and even to some extent, obviously, he's the lead antagonist in Killing Joke, but of course, Killing Joke, at least the anime adaptation, is sort of more a Joker story rather than a Batman story in that respect.
I think also if you did live action, it'd be really hard to pull off that twist that young gangster is Joker, because you would know just by the actor.
Yeah.
And there's just visually, there's so much more you can do with animation. One of the things coming to mind is when he's got Sal and he pisses him off, and we get that shot that zooms in and like the background goes red behind him, and it's like really brief, and it's like the idea of when you have a live action movie now, or I guess at any point in time, there's always the problem, especially in comic book movies, of the suspension of disbelief, where everybody just wants to nitpick and say what's unrealistic, and it's like when you go into an animated movie, surely there is a universal understanding of suspension of disbelief that you can't quite get from a live action movie as well.
Yeah, for sure. Josephine says that when Siskel and Ebert reviewed this for their show, both regretted not seeing it in its theatrical release. Siskel, in particular, liking the film and comparing it favorably to Batman Returns and Batman Forever. Wow, so when did they get round to seeing this? 96, I guess, when it came out on home media.
I'm pretty sure it was. I'm pretty sure Batman Forever was out when they reviewed it.
Right. So they really got around to it.
And I think the story I'd always heard was that it was Siskel that saw it first, and he was so enthusiastic about it that he went to Ebert and said, "You need to watch this, and we need to put it on the show." And then it like boosted the sales of the movie significantly.
Because I believe Phantasm had a really good like home video life.
Yeah, because it didn't even crack its budget in theaters, did it?
Mm-mm.
I wouldn't have thought so. Let's have a quick look.
I'm curious
the
how
budget is 6 million and its box office was about 5.6.
And look at it now. Now it's been a Blu-ray release.
Well, yeah, I mean,
there was also those. They put it back in theaters for the 25th anniversary a few years ago.
And they did a special 20th anniversary screening in Santa Monica as well. And the fact that Pattinson sort of cited it as an example of a film that personified Batman's inner bubble and psyche shows that he's sort of obviously being interested. And even in the list, Rolling Stone's 50 greatest superhero movies of all time, earlier this year, only The Dark Knight was ahead of Batman: Mark of the Phantasm. So yeah, the Burton films were apparently not as good as Mask of the Phantasm, which probably shows you the legacy of it.
Initially, I think I even mentioned this when we did our video on all the Jokers in movies, that there was a point in time where I thought this movie was kind of overrated. And I don't know that I could think that now, because when I look at it now, I can see all the ways it was like not just influential for how we see how Batman's been portrayed now, but as I said, just the approach to making it a movie that's actually about Batman, I feel like goes a long way, especially, and it's because it's still, even despite how much it's influenced other Batman movies, it still feels like it covers territory that so many haven't.
Definitely.
I think Begins kind of tried it with Rachel, but she's just not as interesting as Andrea.
Yeah. I still can't quite put my finger on if it's the character or if it's the Katie Holmes performance. But
For me, I don't really care for the character, whether it's Katie Holmes or Maggie Gyllenhaal.
yeah. Especially when we get to The Dark Knight and it's a love triangle, which is one of the most played out things ever.
Which is really sad because I will stand up every day for Aaron Eckhart's Harvey Dent. I feel like he's the most overlooked part of that movie.
Mm-hmm. I guess because you barely get to see any Two-Face action, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's mostly, they only have one confrontation and it's at the end, and that's probably, that scene is probably more than the rest of the Two-Face scenes combined as far as screen time.
Composer Shirley Walker cited the film score as a favorite of her own compositions.
She should. That score is beautiful.
Wow,
it fits the movie so well.
She passed away in 2006, but she also did the score for Escape from LA, the original Final Destination trilogy. She did the score for Mystery Men. And it says the 2003 Willard, so I'm just double checking as to what Willard is, because I don't remember that film.
The Crispin Glover rap movie that's a remake in the 70s.
Nope.
That
never came out over here.
The 2003 Willard has a kick-ass score, so that's more high praise for Mask of the Phantasm from her. I was just sitting here thinking also, when we were talking about, I was saying how animation kind of makes way for suspension of disbelief. There's also just some really good, I guess you'd call them shots. The terminology gets weird when you're dealing with animated, but I was thinking like the binocular shot where she's at dinner with Reeves and their like hands are clasped and you can see both the reflections in the binoculars. That's not a shot you can get in live action.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that they put focus on that kind of thing. They really use the medium to its fullest.
I think the scene too, where he's in the hospital room talking to the councilman, I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Arthur Reeves.
But what is it?
Arthur Reeves.
Yes. I think it's very impressive that in animation that scene comes off as uneasy as it does.
Yeah.
Like even to the point where like right before it leaves, Batman even gives the look like, what the fuck?
If you were to just walk in, there's no indication it's the same character. He's that far gone.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, you know who voices Reeves?
I paid attention during the credits, but I can't remember.
Hart Bachner. Ellis from Die Hard. Also, by the way, the director of PCU, but mainly Ellis from Die Hard.
I can't remember which character it is, but I know Dick Miller does a voice too.
He's the guy that dies at the beginning. That
The
sets everything
Tombstone
off.
Death?
What's that?
The Tombstone Death?
No, the dude that drives his car through the buildings. Yes.
Oh, okay. That brings Joe Dante back from last night.
It's always confusing that you've got Sol, but you've also got Sal.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole plot is set off by the fact that the Phantasm supposedly killed him, but I mean, yeah, she put the smoke there, but he totally drove his own car through that window.
So you're saying that Andre is like Jigsaw in that way?
Yeah, or it's like, the whole...
from Collateral. I didn't kill him. The bullets in the fall killed him.
What you're saying is he should have belted up, because then it would have just been like Tomorrow Never Dies, and he would have actually been all right when it crashed into the building opposite.
There's also the Liam Neeson debate from Begins. Is it like, I don't have to save you? That's still killing. I mean, ask any sort of law enforcement. I totally let him die, but that's not necessarily me killing him. That's like I still say the trash truck guy in The Dark Knight, the one where the tumbler went underneath and he smashed into the ceiling. That guy is so dead.
Josephine says to keep the identity of Phantasm a secret. As was mentioned, Stacey Keach voiced Carl Beaumont and the Phantasm, but they also made it so the Phantasm had the same build as both Beaumont and Reeves to try and put everybody off. It's a woman. Which I guess is, I mean, if you're trying to make it sort of a big surprise and whatever. The great thing is sort of Joker does sort of spoil it anyway, because, oh, she's here. Like, oh, right. Thanks. I was supposed to be surprised. There you go.
Yeah, that's another thing that I like about the fact that it's another reason I don't hold it against the movie that it's predictable that it's her, is because we as the audience can just live vicariously through the Joker, because he's the one just sitting there going, I know exactly who it is.
As Batman walks
so much so that he's not concerned whatsoever.
Josephine adds, as Batman walks through the scale model city searching for the Joker, a model of the Warner Brothers studios clearly depicted and displayed with the Warner Brothers shield, and many of the items featured in the fair were inspired apparently from items from the New York's World Fair from '39. The rocket and planet centerpiece echoed the Trilon and Perisphere exhibit. I mean, it did feel that way. It felt very sort of like Bioshock Rapture-ish. Like we're harkening back to the old days, hey?
Speaking of the city shots and the World's Fair, did anybody else laugh like I did whenever the Joker was standing there with the building on its head and we cut to behind him and the building only goes over his head and you can see the rest of his body is normal? Am I the only one that laughed at that?
Come to think of it, that doesn't seem, yeah. Not at the time, but in hindsight, probably again if I rewatch it soon. Warner Bros. First fully animated feature film to be rated PG by the MPAA. So at the same time your mother said that's not for kids, MPAA went, kids, bang!
It has a PG-13 feel. I'm kind of surprised it's only PG.
Yeah, it does. I feel like some concessions had to be made somewhere for it to be PG.
That's how I remember kind of feeling about Spider-Verse too.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like especially the Prowler scenes in Spider-Verse have a PG-13 feel at least.
Mm-hmm.
Irony of
I also love the fact that it's the continuity is even good because the Joker gets his tooth kicked out and it's gone the rest of the time. I love the continuity.
To the point that it's almost distracted.
Yeah. And you're saying that him missing a tooth is distracting when he has on a bright red helmet flying a jetpack.
Hey, also that's another thing too, is that it's an animated movie that does play with, not worrying about suspension of disbelief, but yet it's clearly not using cartoon logic because his tooth stays gone.
Irony of ironies, considering what we already talked about in terms of the box office for that week. Dana Delaney delivers the line "He laughs" exactly the same way in Tombstone as she did in Mask of the Phantasm. Same week. Bruce mentioned Patterson's favourite Batman film. Has anyone ever seen Corvette Summer with Mark Hamill?
Yep, it's him and Annie Potts, I believe.
I haven't seen it, but I'm judging by your reaction that it must be good.
Yeah, it's just like a typical like movie, like comedy of that era. But I remember really kind of digging it.
And then under that, speaking of Stacy Keach, your favourite Stacy Keach performance. I'm having to look through like a list of like all that he's done. I love the fact he had a cameo in the Polish language version of Planes.
I mean, when I think of Stacy Keach, the first thing I think of is American History X, actually. And I always want to. I always need to make sure to shout out Body Bags, an anthology horror movie that's really fun. His segment's fucking insane.
Most of the stuff I would have probably known him for was some of his television appearances, like a few episodes of Ray Donovan, and then what was the one of? He showed up for a few episodes in ER, and that was a sort of like big thing. He's sort of like he's never had sort of been typecast. He's never like really committed himself majorly to. I mean, apparently he's in so many seasons of Titus, whatever that is. I don't see him in a lot of stuff. The only recent stuff was Man with a Plan, which was CBS.
Was Titus that sitcom about Christopher Titus?
I think so, yeah.
Because come to think of it, I'm pretty sure Stacy Keach was on
there. Yeah. Well, he's listed as being in it for 54 episodes.
Wow. The thing that I associate, I have no idea why I remember this. One of the things I mainly associate Stacy Keach with is he was in that Chloe Moretz movie If I Stay from like 2014, and that movie's a piece of shit. That movie absolutely sucks. And there's a one scene where I think he's like her grandpa or something, and the whole family is here, and something really emotional, like somebody died or something, and it was supposed to be this big, huge, emotional scene, and everybody reacts. And Stacy Keach says, "Excuse me," and gets up and leaves the room. And I always think of that scene as him saying, "You know what? This scene doesn't deserve my talent. I'm just leaving. I'm not going to put any emotion into this scene. Fuck you guys."
Yeah, I'll do. Mark Hamill does a voice in Howl's Moving Castle, yeah. What song would this version of Batman sing in karaoke? I always like these questions, Josephine. I don't know.
Johnny Cash is hurt.
I think I've already made that one, so I was thinking of saying something else other than that because I think I said it before for something.
Well, I think he would sing it specifically after the scene that he ran from the cops, which is a pretty tense scene.
For a minute during that bit, sort of like when he's down and sort of like at death's door and he sees his blood, I feel like the blooming whatever the music is that's in Platoon when we get the overlong death scene needs to play over it. What song would this version of the Joker sing in karaoke?
Bad Reputation.
Um, I'd, something knowledgeable because like something to do with like him knowing stuff. I can't think of songs off the top of my head, but the fact that he's already worked out who the Phantasm is, and that if he offs Sal, then he's the sort of one that has all the knowledge of everything that's going on and sort of can take control via his shenanigans. So there's something to do with smart stuff there. Bry says, it's ironic that out of all the Batman films that were released in theatres, the only one that Lego Batman movie didn't mention was Mask of the Phantasm. Or at least, he didn't mention 1993. He just mentioned 92, 95, 89 and all that.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say with all of the details that are in that movie, there's got to be a background reference to it somewhere.
I'm on it. I'll look.
Yes, having looked at the Wikipedia page, apparently the perfume that is used by one of the characters in it, the name of the perfume is Mask of the Phantasm. So there is a reference in there. But it's weird that, as Bry's saying, how Alfred mentions, just like that that goes through every single like major film release, but not actually the Phantasm one. Spencer says, if you could make a Batman animated film, what story from the comics would you use that hasn't already been used? Oh.
No Man's Land.
I'm not sort of that knowledgeable enough into the comics to sort of know which one it would be. Part of me thinks you could do a better telling of Killing Joke than what happens where it's like, oh, he just fucks her.
Yes, that whole entire stupid first half would not be there.
Yeah.
I think the Killing Joke would work best in an animated movie that was like an anthology film of like 3 Batman comic stories. But my top 2 contenders for what I would do an animated series on would either be No Man's Land or Nightfall, the one where Bane breaks his back.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to see a live action telling of No Man's Land.
Mm-hmm. You and I have talked about this and cast this.
Yeah,
and honestly, I would have to say I think Pattinson's Batman would be perfect for it.
That crazy cop looks just like Michael Biehn.
I think it's not the same Nightfall, but the Nightfall that closes out Arkham Knight, if you 100% it, I think would be an interesting way to go. Which, of course, is, I think, where Gotham Knights is jumping off from, because they've already established in that game that Batman is dead. He's dead. it's not a joke. He's dead at the start and he's dead at the end. Just in case you think he's showing up or whatever, which probably means he is showing up. Probably.
I couldn't remember. Billy Pettit is that crazy cop's name. That looks exactly like Michael Biehn. That is my all time. I have two all time dream castings. It's Billy Pettit being played by Michael Biehn and Vince McMahon being played by Dennis Quaid. That's all I want in life.
Oh man, I don't know that Dennis Quaid would touch that role now.
Best and worst of the Batman love interests.
So I would say for me, the worst one is Nicole Kidman in Batman Forever. And I would say the best one is Andrea.
What's going on with that Kidman performance? I feel like she was on something that whole movie.
she just comes across as extremely horny.
You know, she's like this is a guy that dresses up as a bat to beat the shit out of people at night, and she seems like the predatory one.
Wasn't this though the spate of her doing all these weird shit films? Because Dead Calm was around the same time, and obviously a few years later was Eyes Wide Shut. I'm just trying to think of like what she did else in that. Let's get Nicole's filmography.
I feel like that spans the 90s, because I feel like Dead Calm was early 90s, and then Eyes Wide Shut was 99.
Yeah. Well, I thought Dead Calm might have been like 92 or 93. Nicole Kidman on screen and stage. That's what we want. We want to look at like whether she did normal films in the 90s.
And for those in the comments that know that we keep talking about the Killing Joke, yes, Batgirl is also a bad love interest, but I'm gonna go with Nicole Kidman because it's a more fun answer to talk about.
Batman was 95, along with To Die For. Portrait of a Lady was 96. Peacemaker in 97. Practical Magic in 98.
Practical Magic fucking sucks.
Eyes Wide Shut in 99, and then Moulin Rouge, and then she sort of went normal with the others in 2001. So yeah, there was sort of a spell of like, I see the other ones. I guess My Life was a PG-13, so I don't think we can say that was sort of like horny her. Malice.
Plus, it had Michael Keaton. It had Michael Keaton dying. It would have been kind of insensitive to be horny the whole movie.
Malice, the Sorkin co-written script. Far and Away, for obvious reasons. Days of Thunder. Dead Calm was 89. I wasn't sure whether it was like early 90s or late 80s. I wasn't sure.
See, what's sad about it is I feel like Nicole Kidman had the depth where she could have played somebody closer to Vicky Vale. Who, Vicky Vale screams a lot, but I mean, she's also, the normal one in a town of really weird people.
And now she's just doing AMC/Odeon things all the time.
She definitely redeemed herself in DC as Aquaman's mom.
Yeah. Honestly, I really like. Josephine says she really likes Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman. I don't think we've seen. It's annoying that whether it's recency bias and whatever, I'm intrigued to see more before I really want to sort of commit on whether I am a big fan of that performance or not.
I do like Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, probably the second best, but it's a pretty big gap because you've got Zoe Kravitz down here and Michelle Pfeiffer's up here off screen.
That's what we talked about when we were talking about Matt Reeves' movie, was where I was saying that I didn't know how to take Kravitz's performance because I think I'm just not a Catwoman fan unless she's a full-on villain like Pfeiffer was.
And as crazy as Pfeiffer was.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's hard to say she's a full-on villain because there's like sympathetic moments in there, but I mean, yeah.
Although she's not the best actress, I honestly prefer Katie Holmes as Rachel to Maggie Gyllenhaal. God, she was so irritating. I know that's controversial.
I think I might have to agree. I think Katie Holmes's version is a little more warm, whereas Maggie Gyllenhaal's comes off kind of cold. I think I might have
if
to agree
Maggie
with
had
Katie Holmes versus Gyllenhaal.
if Maggie had 2 films to do it, I think it would have been better.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why because I can't remember how last minute that casting was with Maggie having to sort of be inserted in. Because I remember there was
Well,
some big
I
thing
know
about
Katie
there was a
Holmes didn't re up because she went and did Mad Money, which she's got to be watching The Dark Knight, going, "Why? Why did I do that?"
We also talked about in The Dark Knight, Rachel was mainly just the center of a love triangle. Apart from the interrogation with Lau and then her death scene, every other moment she has is pretty much related to the love triangle, isn't it? Whereas Katie Holmes and Begins was like actually going around trying to do shit.
hmm.
So she might have had. So Holmes might have had more to work with, I guess is what I'm saying. Even though Gyllenhaal does have the death scene, which is pretty big.
Vicky Vale screaming the '89 Batman is nails on a chalkboard. That's partly why I still wince at Never Say Never Again. She just screams a lot in that as well. Bryce says I was kind of confused on how they did Batman's origins. I think they just wanted to do something different.
Yeah, every version's had, the parents get shot in front of the kids, but we haven't seen a ton. Like, I mean, we've seen him Batmaning, but we haven't seen Bruce really deal with it. Even in Batman Begins, I mean, yeah, he deals with it by becoming a criminal and going into Batman, but we don't ever really see him grieve.
I sort of get you with the confusion because it's at the point when he was sort of masked vigilanteing that sort of like the the trailer or the truck being taken away and whatever, and him sort of like leaping up the building without any gear or anything. I was like, so is he some sort of like super stunt man? Like, how would he just climb up there and leap and whatever? This isn't a PS2 game. Oh. How funny it would be if Christopher Nolan made a movie with Stacy Keach and Mark Hamill. I mean, they'd be good fits for Oppenheimer.
Oh, apparently the rest of Hollywood is too.
I love the fact that the poster is like nobody's names, it's just the explosion because he's like, then the names will come out of the explosion because there'll be that many associated with it.
I imagine the names coming out of an explosion and flying at us, similar to the way they do in the Superman opening credits from the Christopher Reeve movie.
Yeah, because the names at the top of the poster are Murphy, Blunt, Damon, Downey, Pugh, and then that's it. And there's like 30 more people in that movie.
Sorry to
That's
say,
like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where the only people really promoted were DiCaprio, Pitt, and Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
Bro says, sorry to say, but from the words of how it should have ended, because I'm Batman. Yeah, to some extent. Also, what is it with the police's bad relationship with superheroes nowadays in the movies?
That's been a thing since early comics.
All superheroes are bastards?
I mean, technically, they're all breaking the law.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember. I think it was Ebert specifically. Ebert went all in on Hancock because Hancock was literally about a superhero that just gets arrested for what he does because of all the damage.
I mean, to be fair, in Man of Steel, Superman let himself get taken into custody.
And then we just... Was it that or Batman v Superman where he had the CGI'd up mustache?
That was Justice League.
But that was the events from Batman v Superman, right?
Maybe. I think it was when he was in Mexico.
I'm just trying to remember that bit. Spencer says a bit random, but I love the Scooby-Doo and Batman movie. I haven't seen that one. There's 2 or 3, I think, of them, isn't there?
I think, yeah, I think they're all on HBO Max.
I like the fact it's not... All I see listed on the DC Animated Universe, I guess official, is Phantasm, Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero from 98, Batman Beyond Return of a Joker from 2000, Batman Mystery of the Batwoman from 2003, Batman and Harley Quinn from 2017. Wow, that many years in between? And then Justice League versus the Fatal Five from a few years back. I do not see anything to do with us with the Scooby-Doo ones. That's annoying. Batman franchise media. Where's the Scooby-Doo things? There we go. Scooby-Doo, the Batman, the Brave and the Bold, which is different to the other Scooby-Doo Batman one, I think. I remember 2 of them at least. Honestly, I don't have the passion with Hamill's Joker just on the movie on its own, having not watched the series. Yeah. I think he does better voice performances, to be fair, in the series. I think that's where his legacy is. It's not just from his one performance in this is why people go, that's why he's the best Joker. Because obviously, you know, with a series, you can obviously go into a lot more depth with the character, and obviously, you know, he's more of a lead in that rather than a supporting character just pad out the final third to some extent.
What was it he said in that one episode we saw not that long ago where it was like, we'll drown the dog and shoot the neighbors or something like that?
Yeah.
I love I feel like he's got to be one of those characters that's really hard to write because the humor has to be exactly on. Like, I don't think I could ever write lines for Mark Hamill's Joker. There's also some stuff that seems like it's easy humor, but I guess it's in his delivery makes it work. Like in Mask of the Phantasm when he calls him Guano Man. It's like you just put that on paper and it's like yeah, he might say something like that, but then it's like once you hear it in Hamill's voice, then it's like, oh yeah, that's totally a Joker line. But it's almost like nothing's totally a Joker line until it comes out of Mark Hamill's mouth.
I'm intrigued to see what comes with his Sandman appearance. What, next month? I'm trying to remember when the August 5th, next week. Not even, well, it technically is next month, but it's also next week. Alongside Patton Oswalt, doing both sharing voice duties and whatever. Speaking of heroes, I listened to the song My Hero by Foo Fighters today. I know that's completely random. I expect nothing else, Josephine. Unfortunately, I've got to leave chat early because my mum and I continue our binge of Better Call Saul. God, if you're trying to get through the binge just to be able to so you can see the season finale, at the right time. That's probably good planning.
That's what I did. That's what I did with Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
And I just right under the wire, I got to the finale when it aired.
just about right. And Bry, with a few other comments. Into the Spider-Verse won all the Annies it was up for, as the Annies have a bias towards one movie recently. Speaking of focus, I understand why because of the production, but quality is not that great. I mean, yeah, I mean, as you say, if it does sort of. Sometimes it does feel like it is a TV film, but I do like the fact it was given the chance to actually be on a big screen. Maybe because
I
of
just
holiday stuff, or
I just miss major movies having 2D animation. I think that's why a lot of international ones are still so good. It's because they haven't completely abandoned it.
I still cannot believe that Princess and the Frog is still their final 2D animation. At least I can think of off the top of my head, considering how well that did compared to I don't know, Home on the Bloody Range, which I think was the one before that. Bryce says I consider this a bit overrated. I give it a 6 out of 10 or a C grade, depending on it. I would say I'd sort of put it around the 7 or the 8. I do prefer like some of the stuff like the at least the first two Nolan films, and probably both Burton's. But I still think compared to uh, some of the stories that we've seen in comic books, at least from what I've seen with Linkara covering them and everything, and like the other sort of stuff, I think it's probably as a sort of representation of the animated series, it's still pretty strong. It's just obviously it can't really go that full. It'd be interesting to see an animated series that does maybe not go full R, but more on the verge of that, to be more slightly adult, or basically sort of what would it be? I guess R would be the next grade up, wouldn't it? Because I always think R as sort of like a 15 or 18 certificate, as it would be over here, rather than an NC, like an NC-17. But I think there's enough there. Whether there's enough of a market for it, we'd have to wait and see if Warner Brothers are desperate enough. If everything else fails. But I enjoyed it. It's also weird to it's weird to see something that short on a cinema screen. Then I have to remember that Johnny English. I think the first Johnny English was only like 80 minutes, maybe.
That sounds right.
It was short, an hour and a half. Oh, Bry actually also says it was actually the last animated one before. The last one was actually Winnie the Pooh, but Disney Animation had to sadly end Hand Drawn after it flopped. Then again, that may have been the fault to releasing it on the same weekend as Deathly Hallows Part 2. Yeah, that's, well done, Disney. I can't wait for Cartoon Saloon's new film, My Father's Dragon. So yeah, to round up, guys, final thoughts.
I think it's top 5 quality wise. I don't think it's as enjoyable as some of the other Batman films because it is very serious, but I would say it's top 5.
For me, it basically comes back to what I was saying, where I initially would call it overrated, but it's not one that I go back to a lot, but I can certainly appreciate it for what it accomplished as far as telling a Batman story in a way that, like I said, still as influential as it's been, still has touched on some stuff that hasn't been touched on before or since.
Which is really hard to do with a character that's been in media as much as Batman has, and as long as he has.
And so when we were talking about it not making its budget back, and it's like being made for $6 million and only falling at like $5 million, associating that fact with Batman, it just seems so foreign now.
Yeah, because usually it's any Batman movie that comes out is guaranteed to at least make back its budget.
Yeah.
I mean, what did Pattinson's Batman end up? Where's it sitting at as opposed to its budget?
Let's have a quick look. The Batman. The Batman film, yeah, rather than the Batman TV series. Budget was somewhere in the region of 185 to 200 million. Its box office got to roughly 770.
That's about what I would expect.
Currently, let's just check the numbers. 4th highest grossing film, behind Top Gun, Doctor Strange, and Jurassic World. Minions might move in front of it, maybe, depending how much momentum that keeps, and maybe 4 as well. But we'll have to see.
I'm going to safely assume nobody's catching Top Gun this year, for good reason.
Black Panther might have enough momentum towards the end of the year.
I did hear the trailer got really good reactions.
Yeah,
that's what I heard too.
The headline I saw was it had double the number of views than the first teaser for the first Black Panther did. 5-6 years ago.
But for completionist's sake, back to my top 5 argument, because I'm sure you guys have discussed this, but I haven't had a chance to. My top 5 would go Batman 89, Dark Knight, Pattinson's Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, and then Begins.
During a Q&A, we were asked to rank the actors. As far as ranking, we did a lot of ranking the movies in our Burton versus Nolan video from 2015. But like I've said, I think things have changed for me since we did that video. Like I was in a place at that time where I had The Dark Knight in last because The Dark Knight's magic had kind of worn off on me. I had Begins at the top as my favorite. But now I'm pretty sure I would not have Rises above The Dark Knight now. And I would say, much as I really do love Begins that much, both of Burton's movies are ones that there are no Batman movies I revisit more than Burton's 2. I go back to Burton's 2 multiple times a year, both of them.
If you rank the Batman, the guys playing Batman, my 5 would be Keaton, Pattinson, Affleck, Conroy, Bale.
When we did the Q&A question, I just did the live action ones because I didn't have enough of Conroy to really go on. And I feel like it's kind of weird to try to rank live action performances and a voiceover in the same vicinity.
Well, if I took out Conroy, then it would go Keaton, Pattinson, Affleck, Bale. I mean, my choices really are only Kilmer, Clooney, and West. But for nostalgia factor, I'd put West at 5.
I think that was mine, just switching Bale and Affleck.
I feel like, and I think I've said it on this channel before, I really feel like Ben Affleck's Batman was a great Batman saddled with mediocre films.
Yeah.
Although I do really enjoy the Snyder cut, I won't lie.
Yeah, there's that, and I've watched the ultimate cut of Batman vs Superman more than usual.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't go back to it a lot, but I've gone back to it more than I probably thought I ever would when I first saw it.
Mm-hmm. And I think a big part of that is Affleck's Batman's really good.
Yeah.
I think your mic's muted.
Oh, it's not muted. It's plugged in and doesn't work.
Uh,
That's twice I had to do that. That's interesting. Um, also concerning. Uh, but so yeah, Bry's asking the next film. In 2 weeks, we'll be covering 1986's Something Wild from Jonathan Demme, which appears to be streaming on Criterion Channel and DirecTV. And your usual, I say your usual places to buy or rent stuff. It doesn't seem to be listed for Amazon. It's just Apple and Google, and Vudu and Redbox. No Amazon. Amazon does not like Something Wild, apparently. Thanks,
And
Orion Pictures.
if you can, things may have changed since I last looked, but because I looked before I submitted the movie. um, if you can deal with ads, I think I saw it hanging out on Tubi as well.
Oh, okay.
Unless that's changed since then.
I mean, I'm just trying to go and just watch to see if there's like any idea as to where it is for American viewers and whatever. I'll find a way. Don't worry. I just like the fact
I'm searching through Roku to see what it pops up.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, and it says Orion Pictures distributed it, and they're a producer that's owned by MGM, which is Amazon. So why is it not on Amazon? Didn't that all go through? Isn't that happening? Now I'm confused. Oh, Bry says that he has the Criterion Blu-ray, so.
Brian, and Josh Safdie, I know, are three people that have the Something Wild Criterion Blu-ray.
Just those three. Nobody else bought it. Maybe.
Yeah.
It was taken off of Tubi.
Oh.
All that's listed on Roku is the Criterion Channel, Apple TV, the Roku Vudu Store, Vudu, and Redbox. So I don't know how in the world I'm going to watch it.
Other means. I feel I have to say that and do sort of like the Jedi like mind trick hand move. Other means. So that is a lot for this one. Thanks to Bry, Josephine, Spencer, and anybody else obviously watching on archive. We thank you for hopping in and hearing us talk about Mask of the Phantasm for the past hour and a half or so. As I say, we'll be back 2 weeks' time, around the 7th of July at some point in the evening. Sorry, 7th of August. Sorry, I was looking at my calendar and it said July, and then under 31 was 7, and I was like, 7th of July. 7th of August for the Q&A section of the week, and then Monday the 8th will be our talk on Something Wild. So You can find me on Twitter at AshesMyNameUK with various things like me tweeting to try and get free streams of wrestling for this weekend, which I won't win. Snack stashes will be coming from me soon. I've got a few that are probably ready to film over the next couple of days, so there'll be some stuff there. AJ has movie reviews and verses coming quite a bit as we gear towards whatever the hell we're going to be doing next month. The beginning of the oh, I also got word by looking at the tweets. We officially find out the Venice list tomorrow, so I guess we can discuss that properly in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll have TIFF by then. Who knows? Chris.
Yes.
Your Instagram.
Instagram is Chris Hunts Toys. Probably a couple small toy hunts, maybe here and there. But there is a convention that I'm going to August the 13th, it's right before I go to Dynamite, where we're going to a 70s, 80s, 90s convention for toys, which with me looking for Michael Keaton Batman items right in that wheelhouse. So I'm hoping to be able to post a haul on there. Also, I'll post pictures of the con itself, so you can see what we were looking at and get some ideas for some cool things. But that should be fun. So August 13th is the 70s, 80s toys, 70s, 80s, 90s toy convention. So there should be pictures of the event and hopefully a haul.
And AJ cannot be found on social media, and just like Keith Richards, cannot be killed with the conventional weapons. Or I guess Paul McCartney, because he was in the other Pirates of the Caribbean film. I don't know. So with that, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Until tomorrow, boys and girls. That's all the donkey's got to say about that.